I'm not sure how many of you are built like me, where I think that the college football playoff expansion is a little asinine, where 12 teams, whether or not they do their job throughout the regular season, are worthy of fighting for a national championship. But what I will say is that if there ever was an argument that we need more than a 14 playoff, this is the year where people will go back and say, hey, remember when this team was left out and what they could have done? Yeah, because there will be at least one, if not three teams that could end up winning a national title in 2023, playing in a New Year's Six Bowl instead. If you are new here, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. So if this is the type of content you enjoy, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on the expansion of the college football playoff. Tell your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, the drunk guy passed out in a Publix parking lot, your entire church congregation, the people you work out with at the gym, all about this channel, because we're on the race to 1,000. Then 5,000, then 10,000, then 15,000, then 100,000. And I promise you, we will get there at some point. So make sure you hit subscribe. And as always, let's talk college football. By the way, if you want to give me a follow on social media, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson, the exact same as my YouTube channel. So when you hit subscribe on one, go on over to X and hit follow on the other. Thanks in advance. There's no shot that we will see a scenario where a qualified team that handled business, that proved throughout the regular season they are good enough to win a national title, will not be sitting there on Sunday watching that number 4 spot be filled and then go, well, why the hell is it not us? What the hell did we not do that was worthy of playing for a title, playing for a shot at making it to Houston and hoisting up a championship? What did we not do good enough? And this is where I will say, if the college football playoff committee wanted to do expansion, I get it. I do. We don't need 12 teams. We do not need 12 teams because I can tell you this much. In the history of the college football playoff over the last decade, we have never seen more than, I would say, probably 6 teams truly worthy of playing for a national title. Like even the year in 2014 where TCU and Baylor both finished 5-6 and they were left to the wayside because Ohio State did its job and Florida State did its job and Oregon did its job and Bama handled business. Outside of that, we've never really sat down and said, yep, that number 7 team is good enough to win the title. That number 8 team or that number 9 team, they're good enough. This isn't the year. And partially it's because of there hasn't been a lot of chaos. Like I thought for sure we would not be going into week 14, conference championship weekend, and having conversations about what happens if an undefeated loses in conference championship to a one-loss team. A one-loss team that also lost only one game out of conference. So they're also undefeated in conference play. And that's what you have at your disposal when Atlanta welcomes both Georgia, right across the road in Athens, and Alabama, which is basically home away from home because they go there almost every other season. But that's really the case. I have been a proponent, if we are going to expand to playoff more than 4, get to 8. Because 8 at least is viable, where you do have probably 6 teams that can win a national title. One team that maybe plays in a weaker conference where they don't end up having the right resources or they're missing a key element, but they did their job, so we reward them. And then that last team that maybe just caught a trip up in the middle of the season, but then got right back on the wagon and handled the course all the way through. That I do believe is possible. And if you really look at it this year, the 8-team playoff makes a ton of sense. For this season alone, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, I will go with Texas, and even Florida State, all could go ahead and earn the right to be in the college football playoff this weekend, no matter what happens. Simple. Georgia, Michigan, Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State win. They're all undefeated. What's your argument that they don't belong? Because they don't have a quarterback in Tallahassee? Because Washington played close against Stanford, against Arizona State, Washington State? No, it's a stupid argument. They did their job. Everyone's allowed to have a trip-up game. Everyone's allowed to go ahead and find their part in the regular season where they're a little tired, they're a little banged up, they need to catch their breath, and another team is riding high on momentum, or they just go into that locker room and you hear the epic post-game speech or the pre-game speech, just like you would hear in a movie like Any Given Sunday. We are who we think we can be. And that dude, you hear that, and they just play up to a standard. Is that worthy of saying that they don't belong because of, oh, they were a struggling one-win roster? No, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. You ever see the movie Glass Onion and you hear Daniel Craig's character go, no, it's just plain dumb. That's what we are doing when we're saying, oh, you don't win a conference championship this year, you don't belong in the playoff. But unfortunately, that's where we are when it comes to actually breaking down this scenario. Because if Georgia doesn't win, you could make a case. Well, they won 29 games in a row. They handled business against everybody. They dismantled teams, ranked teams, I might add in, that weren't supposed to be good this year. And they only lost to Alabama. And Alabama may end up winning the national title. But hell, they're not good enough. No, that would not be the case. Because if you go look on Vegas odds right now, Georgia still is the favorite to win. And if they were to lose a game, Georgia would probably be, what, number 3 at the worst when it comes to the rankings and the odds? No, it's stupid. But at the same time, Ohio State's an interesting case. I can tell you this much. When Ohio State appeared on my television screen last night at number 6, my jaw dropped. And it only dropped because of, I realized in that scenario, there really isn't a shot where we can justifiably put them in right now. Now, there is chaos, and we'll get to some theories and some scenarios in another episode where we talk about how there is a case for Ohio State to claim their own as one of the 4 best in college football. But you lost by less than a touchdown in Ann Arbor on the road because your quarterback threw 2 interceptions and J.J. McCarthy didn't. And honestly, if you really want to boil down the game, that's what it comes down to. 2 turnovers, 1 momentous drive, and then, of course, you have Blake Corum rushing in after Zach Center goes down. And it's a moment to where you couldn't paint it better. I promise you there will be photos of that touchdown and everyone cheering on, let's go, Zach. Let's go, Zach. That will be somewhere inside of Bo Schembechler's and inside of Michigan Stadium. That will be somewhere inside the athletic complex. But outside of that game, you're really going to tell me that Ohio State couldn't beat up on other teams? Ohio State right now would beat Florida State. Ohio State would probably beat Washington. Ohio State would probably hold their own against Alabama and Texas, and I would even throw in Oregon for that matter. And they maybe would be able to even test against Michigan in a rematch. That could happen. So you can't tell me that they're not deserving. If you ever want to have an argument that there was a year for an 18 playoff, this is it. Because we're really going to have a serious conversation when it comes to resumes and when it comes to status and when it comes to conference championships, that this team didn't do enough to prove they're right. And here's the bottom line, people, what it comes down to for me. A conference championship weekend does not decide if you are good enough to play in the college football playoff. Your on-field work does. Because much like I've said before, if we want to go ahead and just pick the 4 best teams that end up winning it all, just go ahead and look at Vegas, tell Vegas to go ahead and be the college football playoff committee, throw those 4 names in a pile, and then say, here, this is what's best for ratings, this is what's best for numbers, this is what's best for us, and those are the 4 teams that will win the national title. Just do that. But that's not the case. And it never has been the case, and it never will be the case because of games that are played are the ones that matter. I'm telling you, I still believe Alabama would beat Texas. Head-to-head right now on a neutral field, Alabama would hold its own against Texas, and they probably would win. Now, will I say that Texas is not deserving? No. Texas won by double digits in Bryant-Denny Stadium, a place where Nick Saban does not lose, and when he does, it's in emphatic fashion, and they handle business. They get the head-to-head. But I'm not going to justifiably say Alabama couldn't win that game. This is where we are right now when it comes to the future of expansion for the college football playoff. I don't agree that 12 teams is possible. Do me a favor. Do you really want to see Tulane lose in the first round? Do you really want to see a Liberty 13-0 team that is basically better than Cincinnati, not as good as Cincinnati, but right up there in terms of record and strength? Do you really want to see that team get blown out in the first round? No. And do you really want to award teams like Missouri, teams like Ole Miss, teams like Penn State, who did do their job? They played well against quality competition or lesser tier competition. But when it came to taking down the big boys, they basically said, hey, little brother, go back in the corner, wait your time. Because that's what it was. Ole Miss lost to Georgia and it lost to Alabama. Penn State lost to Michigan and Ohio State. And Missouri, they lost to Georgia and LSU has the Heisman Trophy winner, in my opinion. And they also have one of the best offenses we've seen in a hot minute in college football. So they did their job, minus against the teams that we could say were better than them. And then what happens is we also go into that argument of, well, Arizona played really well down the stretch and LSU's defense, are we really going to want to see a high scoring game, or do they belong in here? Oklahoma didn't win Bedlam, but they do have a better record. But is that justifiably okay for a team like Oklahoma State? No, we don't need 12. We need 8. And I agree that if this was ever a time to go ahead and say, this is why we're having expansion, this is the year to do so. Because you don't deserve to be left out of the playoff because one quarterback is not going to be on your roster. This is more than just a team made in Tallahassee of players than Jordan Travis. You have good wide receivers. You have an exceptional offensive line. And they fought their ass off throughout the regular season to go ahead and close out the year undefeated. And so what? Because of number 13 is not playing, they're unlucky now? No, stop it. I understand that we need college football playoff expansion, mainly because of the ratings and mainly because of the viewership, and it gives more drama. And college football is a drama, and it's a reality TV show at its best. Don't believe me? There's a coach that right now is headed back to Fayetteville, Arkansas as the offensive coordinator after being one of the most successful coaches the Hogs have seen in a hot minute as a head coach. That guy's going back, and after he was fired, and it was in elated fashion to where the meme still is alive and well. It's a reality show. But we do have the argument that this year, there are at least 7 teams deserving of playing for a college football playoff spot. And 2 of them are going to be left out. And one of them may get in because of they're undefeated. And that's kind of the case of where it's like, I get it. Do I agree with it? No. I don't think a lot of people do. In fact, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, most people would say 12 teams is asinine, it's egregious, and this is a money grab. But if you wanted to have expansion, this is the year to do it. Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, and Georgia could all win a national title, and nobody would bat an eye. Nobody would have any inclination that that's impossible to happen. And Florida State, whether or not they could win a national title or beat up on Texas or beat up on Oregon without Jordan Travis, and Tate Rudemaker is running his way to being the next Cardell Jones, they did their job during the regular season. How can you justifiably leave them out? You want to go ahead and say that expansion doesn't matter? Unfortunately, I'm starting to lose the argument for it. I will never agree with 12 teams. I can never stomach the fact that you didn't do enough during the regular season and we're rewarding mediocrity. This is a participation trophy for you losing to good teams. Way to go, champ, for hanging in there. Never will agree with that. But 8 teams, this is why we need 8 teams. Because if this is the year where 2 teams, more than deserving, if not more, will have to sit at home and watch 2 teams in Houston slug it out when they're sitting and wondering, that should have been me. No, you know what? That really could have been us. Thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.